No series has managed to reach the mass popularity as quickly as the Pokémon franchise. With the combined efforts of its popular trading card games, anime, and wide variety of video game experiences from the mainstream to obscure, Pokémon was able to win over the hearts and minds of millions of players around the world for nearly 2 decades. However, by 2016, the once massive fanbase had begun to dwindle due to the franchise fatigue that oh so many video games receive. The Pokémon Company needed to find a way to bring back the fans that had launched their fanbase into the stratosphere, while appealing to those who had never even touched the series before, something that just wouldn't work on the handhelds that they called home. But there was another option on the table, a device universal to the majority of people living today, the smartphone, and with it, mobile gaming. With this in mind, there was one remaining question: where to start? As a sort of testing ground for this more contemporary outgoing, it all began as a joke. On April 1st, 2014, the immeasurable media giant Google revealed the Google Maps Pokémon Challenge to the world as a mere April Fool's joke. Using Google Maps, players could scour the globe in search of 25 Pokémon from each successive generation, and the ever-elusive Mew, with all of them being strewn about various real-world locations. The idea was conceived by Pokémon Company's Tatsunikazu Ishihara and Nintendo President Satoru Iwata as a way to test whether or not a mobile Pokémon title could possibly succeed. The results of this experiment spoke for themselves as millions took up the challenge that they had extended en masse. A mobile Pokémon title was a sure bet, but who would take on such a monumental task? Game Freak had the mainline games to worry about, and the rest of the Pokémon plethora of secondary developers had little to no experience with mobile titles. There was only one team up for the task, and conveniently enough, they had just worked with them on their little joke: Niantic. An internal startup founded within Google itself by John Hank, Niantic's main business interests were within the newly budding augmented reality side of gaming. Starting off by developing Field Trip, an app that let you find interesting things hidden throughout the world, the team truly came into their own with the release of Ingress, a team-based augmented reality game, tasking players with choosing between 2 teams and fighting for dominance over portals that appear throughout the world. Ingress was an engrossing app that encouraged many players to travel, make friends, and uncover the hidden story behind it all. Whole communities, friendships, and even relationships blossomed due to the app's influence. An experience that even drew in Ishihara and his wife back in their home country of Japan. He was intrigued by how players of the game were drawn to recognizable landmarks and the many possibilities that the mechanic provided. Possibilities that the Pokémon franchise could latch onto and further improve. Seeing an opportunity, Ishihara along with Satoru Iwata soon began talks with John Hank on making a collaboration between their respective companies, with Iwata in particular being excited by their new endeavor. In the year after the deal, Iwata could continue to provide further insight on the project, crafting it to be worthy of the Pokémon name. But he wasn't the only franchise veteran overseeing their effort. Pokémon's executive producer and iconic music composer, Junichi Masuda, was at the helm for the majority of the time, giving Niantic the knowledge he gained from his work on the franchise from the beginning. Very few Pokémon spin-offs had ever been given such attention, with the majority of them being left to their own devices. But Niantic's case was special. They were building Nintendo's first entry into the mobile gaming market. It had to be spectacular. It had to blow everyone away. It had to be a hit, an instant classic in every shape and form. And Niantic was willing to take up that cause, as it had just been freed from Google and became its own independent company. Officially announced by Ishihara on September 10, 2015, Pokémon Go's reveal trailer inspired awe and wonder in the millions of people who watched it. Real Pokémon in the real world, a dream that many had dreamed of when they were children, and one that franchise creator Satoshi Tajiri had envisioned from the very beginning. Iwata too was part of this dream. However, sadly, he passed away before he could ever see it become a reality, even giving advice on the project when he was admitted to the hospital near death. It was a sad turn of events for Pokémon Go's development. But, as they say, the show must go on. The world was hotly anticipating this new release, and Niantic was happy to oblige. Releasing on July 6, 2016 in North America with a slowly roll-out release around the world, Pokémon Go was what fans had been craving for and wasn't at the same time. It most definitely let players live out their dreams of catching Pokémon in the real world, yet not in the fantastical way it had been advertised as. Pokémon Go's gameplay was deceptively simple. All players needed to do was step out into the real world and hopefully run into a Pokémon in the wild. Using a GPS and internet connection, they could be found anywhere. They could be in the grass, rural areas, mountainous regions, or even near historical landmarks. Where one would assume a real-life Pikachu live is probably where you would end up finding one. Once you have one of the critters in your sights, all you had to do was simply swipe forward, throw your Pokeball, and pray that you successfully capture the Pokemon. No battling required. Catching Pokemon was the bread and butter of Pokémon Go, with battling only being a supplementary affair. As you gain levels like any standard RPG, you eventually unlock access to the game's rival teams, Team Valor, Mystic, and Instinct, and choose one to represent. With teams came gyms that you could take over and run, using a light version of Pokemon's standard battling system to overcome your opponents that involved less skill than one would hope. The only way to take over a gym was to, of course, level up your Pokemon and evolve them into even greater heights. But how could you do that without battling? Easy. Pokemon candies. Sending your unneeded Pokemon to Professor Rillo earns you candies to level up your Pokemon CP. The higher the CP, the more powerful the Pokemon, encouraging players to catch as many Pokemon as they could, no matter how weak they were. It was essentially a bare-bones version of the battle system Pokemon fans had come to expect. A nice distraction to be sure, yet unmemorable in the long run. Other features such as eggs, potions, and Pokestops strewn around famous landmarks that gave free items were additions that only slightly improved the experience. But overall, it was mediocre in comparison to past Pokemon entries. But what they were trying to sell wasn't amazing gameplay, it was the experience of it all. And people ended up buying into that. Downloaded over 15 million times in its first week, Pokémon Go was one of, if not the most successful launches of any app of all time, as it went on to download 500 million more times in the preceding months. It was official. Pokemania had returned. What had swept up the world into a frenzy in the later years of the 90s was now repeating itself nearly 2 decades later. Not the games nor multitude of spun-off media could hope to match its success. But its true success wouldn't be measured in sale numbers or apps downloaded, no. Its true success came in how it impacted a generation. Pokémon Go got many gamers to step outside for once and explore their surroundings. It made people want to exercise, travel, and even make new friends along the way. Whole communities sprouted up around the title with massive crowds chasing after rare Pokémon, and some people camping out in groups just to keep on catching late into the night. People who would have never met each other before were brought together because of this one little title, and the endless friendships and relationships brought forth because of it are all the accolades it needs. Rarely does a game impact the industry, but never has one affected society socially as much as Pokémon Go. As it slowly fades into obscurity, possibly never to regain its popular status again, Pokémon Go will always be remembered fondly as something that showed that video games can be much more than just story and gameplay mechanics. They can be something that changes who we are for the better, when they look out where they're going first. Well, hello there, and thank you for watching another episode of Debut. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see us cover more of your favorite games every week. In the comments down below, let us know what kind of games you're interested in, and they may just end up on the show. You have been listening to Bolt Legends. I do various videos about Pokemon and more, so if you liked hearing me, go check out my channel. I will appreciate it. But either way, that's it for me. Don't forget to continue that thirst for knowledge.